Well, growing up, I didn't know too much about my family's history or how my parents came to Canada. And basically after they passed, 1988 for my father, 1990 for my mother, got a little bit more interested in how they landed in Canada. And since then, I've researched their past from wherever I could. That means interviewing cousins and the older people in the family. Plus, went into a little bit of research into genealogy. So I started looking into documents at home, and then other documents that I could find from various sources like Library and Archives Canada. And also I joined a genealogy group on Facebook, social media, which has been very helpful to get tidbits of all the history. So I've been talking about the immigration of the Chinese to Canada and how it intertwines with our family story. In China, southern China, where my parents came from, so that's Guangdong province, and my father, Wong, was the first one to leave his family to come to Canada. He was the third born in his family, and he was 13 years old when he reached Canada. But going back, in the 1800s, China was basically under turmoil, and weather conditions resulted in floods and drought. The political situation was unstable, so we had the Qing dynasty, but there are all sorts of political uprisings, etc. My family, or my dad's family, being from an agrarian society, basically not just them, but the whole population could not provide, raise enough food to, feed the population. So families in southern China, Guangdong province, especially the Toisan area, looked for opportunities elsewhere. And this could have been Canada, the US, Southeast Asia, as far south as, let's say, Australia, New Zealand, and even South Africa and Peru. These places were basically, eventually became be called Gold Mountain. Gold Mountain basically symbolizes a place where there's this opportunity, easy to make a living, and basically they thought these were places which would give them opportunities to make a living and help their family. Around the 1850s, gold rush in California precipitated a lot of out-migration from southern China. And when that dwindled, the Chinese were, well, let's say very few made good from that opportunity. The next opportunity came basically in the building of the railroad. The promise was made by John A. Macdonald, the Prime Minister, that said BC would be linked with a rail line to join the rest of Canada. Well, that didn't come true till the start of the railway 10 years later in 1881. It was easy for the railway to be built from eastern Canada up to the Rockies. So through Saskatchewan, Alberta, it was quite easy, but you're looking at the mountains, pure granite. And so the dilemma was, the government basically wanted to build this railroad through BC, but they needed cheap labor to do it. So what they did was recruit workers, laborers from China, and especially the Guangdong province. And 1881 started to build the railway through BC. By 1885, it was finished, and by that time they had recruited up to 17,000 Chinese to build the railway. And they were given the most dangerous jobs, and they say for every mile of track, one Chinese died and could have been buried along the track. By 1885, railroad was finished, and the Chinese were no longer welcome. So at that point, the Canadian government, BC government, passed laws that kind of restricted the immigration of Chinese to Canada. They immediately imposed a head tax, So basically, they charged $50 per Chinese person that wanted to come into Canada. And that was only targeted for the Chinese. By 1900, because things are still so dire in southern China, the Chinese still wanted to come to Canada, US, and other places, but specifically for Canada, they raised the head tax to $100. That still didn't stop the Chinese from coming. Things are still that bad in China. By 1903, they raised it to $500. Now, $500 in those days could buy 2 houses, or it was equivalent to 2 years of wages. So by 1923, they started enacting a law that said, it doesn't matter how much money you have, we don't want you here. And so the Chinese Immigration Act in 1923 said no more Chinese. That was it. Where the laws were and the Chinese were not welcome in the broader society, that's why there are Chinatowns. The Chinese also stuck together, started business there. So that's why we have Chinatowns right across Canada. All the major cities, Vancouver, Victoria, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, right through to the Maritimes. So my father, 1921, he was 13. He was the third born in the family, and he was the oldest boy. He was selected, chosen, to leave his family and come to Canada to make a living and perhaps send money home to help the family, who were very poor. So his father talked to a neighbor who had a son that had a business already established in Vancouver, and asked him if he could take on my father as a son, as part of his family, and bring him over to Canada, which he did. So in 1921, he arrived on the Empress of Asia, August 8, and he was 13 years old. So can you imagine, 13 years old, he left the family and the whole world that he ever knew. And 13 years old, if you look at kids here in Edmonton, they're just starting junior high school. He was asked to leave his family and to cross the ocean, without family, and to start his life here. By 1923, I said they passed that Chinese Exclusion Act, which barred further Chinese from coming to Canada. So now he's 15 years old. He didn't know if he could go back home, because in 2 years I don't think he had the money to do so, or to come and bring any family here. And he didn't know how long this act would last. The government required all Chinese to register with the RCMP or an official government agency. And doesn't matter if you're born here or not, the Chinese were basically targets. The government wanted to know every movement of Chinese in Canada, whether you're born here or not. And so from what I found, they gave him a year to register. And he had registered way late, so July 1st was enacted. By June 30th, of the next year, you had better have registered with the government. And he left it till about the last week in June to do so. When he came to Canada, he was actually given this certificate. Because he came as a student and also a son of a merchant, he didn't have to pay that $500 head tax, which is fortunate. But still, he couldn't avoid the discrimination and the racism that existed at the time. In 1924, he registered, and this is a document that was given pretty well to everyone that registered. Now, if you see the picture here, he is now 15 years old, and it wasn't until 2 years ago, on the centenary of the Chinese Exclusion Act, so 2023, that I saw this picture for the first time. I was happy to see this because I would never have seen his picture at 15 years old. They say when they had started attaching the pictures of the immigrants to certificates, that was kind of the start of the passport process in Canada. He came in 1923. His family that brought him over would have helped him for perhaps a little while, but that family, the man that brought him over had eventually 8 children to feed himself. So my father had, by 1924, made it into Alberta. He may have had connections given to him by the family that he came over with. And in a little black book that he had kept, he had addresses of places and businesses, cafes, grocery stores in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. And perhaps these were given to him so that he could, contact these people and maybe ask them for work. He may have worked as a cook. He may have worked as a laborer in a coal mining camp, or from what I found out, maybe a place in southern Alberta, where he may have worked with a fellow that owned a restaurant and also ran a market garden and also had a general store. So he decided, basically, I think, to settle in as a market gardener. By about 1930, he was already here in Edmonton. Had market gardens along the North Saskatchewan River. And 1930, 1929, his family would have perhaps sent this photograph. A letter would have said, come home, we have arranged your marriage to this girl here. So in 1929, late 1929, he would have applied to leave Edmonton and get passage back to his home village. Again, he had to register with the federal government and go through another process where they would take his information. He had to apply for the time he went, the day, and what ship he would leave on. And when this document was issued to him, he would turn in his original immigration certificate and take this with him. The law was he had 2 years to return, no more. And if he was late in returning, he might have been deported, or he might have had to pay $500 head tax. So that was something to worry about. So he went home, got married. He went home in October, got married December, end of December, to that girl who is my mother. And he may have spent at most 4 months with her. So 4 months, by end of April, he was back here in Edmonton. And basically she would have moved in with his family and started being part of that family, taking care of his mother and father. And then he came back alone, probably before the growing season started the next year. So to get back to his making money and sending remittances home. He came back in 1930. That was the start of the Depression. Depression lasted for about 10 years. 1939 was the Second World War. Second World War lasted till 1945, right? So throughout that time, he was here basically alone. One part of the population of the Chinese said, okay, why should we join the war effort if we were treated so badly, right? They don't want us here anyway, so why should we give up our blood or whatever to help Canada? The other side, the other half, said if we don't do anything to help the war effort, nothing's going to change. So about 600 Chinese actually wanted to serve the armed forces. And even that, they were, hard done by, because when they went to apply, a lot of these applications were just thrown in the garbage. The government didn't want them even to serve Canada. But anyway, it turns out that about 600 Chinese people did. And after the war ended, this new generation Those became more educated. They lobbied the government. They took part in, political rallies and, formed committees, et cetera, to push the government to allow them, the vote, because they never had the vote, and also, to allow the Chinese to become citizens, be equals in Canada. With all that, the Exclusion Act was finally rescinded or canceled in 1947. So in 1947, my father, along with lots of other Chinese, studied to get their Canadian citizenship. It took 2 years for him. So in 1949, he finally got his Canadian citizenship papers and immediately applied to have my mother come over. So that was 18 and a half years that they were separated. She finally was able to join him in 1949 in Edmonton, and immediately was put to work, basically, after arriving here, and maybe a short, period to get to know each other again, but basically put to work in 1949. She actually came into a, better conditions, better, environment, basically. At home, probably, or in China, rudimentary plumbing, if anything at all, right? And here, her first house was a house my dad had moved from down by the North Saskatchewan River into Calder, and he had it renovated, put on a new foundation, and it actually had, it still had outdoor plumbing, water was still trucked in, but shortly after he got basically natural gas and also electricity. From then on, the both of them, worked in Market Garden right through till they retired. We'll talk about my father's Market Gardens. So our family doctor, Dr. Max Dalgoy, he graduated in 1936 from the U of A Medical School. And he had told me that my father was one of his first patients. He lived near the General Hospital area, but he knew my father garden near the High Level Bridge. And it was later on, after some research, it was the exact place where the Royal Glenora Club sits right now. The garden was there. The aerial photograph showed that, it was cultivated, that area, and for crops. He also worked an area south of the government house. So where government house is, if you go down toward the river valley, there's the slope. It's not really level land, but it's slope land. And he had a farm there as well. So those are the 3 places he farmed. And that is where the house came from, the government house area. He moved that all the way to Calder before my mother came over. So he was doing this. He had a partner in Riverdale, but basically, he's here alone. There's no family. If we go back to 1945, my mother's in China. He's here by correspondence. And it's important in the Chinese frame of mind that each family have a boy. Now, they were together for maximum 4 months, didn't bear any children. So 1945 comes, that's 15 years after they're married. Somehow, by correspondence, they decided to adopt a boy. And this boy was my father's number 3 in the family. His brother, who was number 6 in the family, had a bigger family. So basically they gave my mother one of their sons to be her own, and my dad. My dad would have not seen this boy till he came to Canada. So my mother was burdened with taking care of his family, and here is another mouth to feed, a son that they basically adopted. And then my mom and dad had a baby girl, and she passed away within a couple months. The baby girl was the first Canadian born, and then they had a son. And After that son was born, they brought over my cousin to help them on the farm as well. And then I was born in 1954. He was single basically until 1949. By 1954, 5 years, he had about 6 mouths to feed. He had these mouths to feed, so we had to expand his operation. While in Calder, he also rented about 20 acres on the east side of the Beverly Bridge. He had about 20 acres down there. A group of Chinese people tried to garden in the area with irrigation pipes, etc., but they failed. And so he rented the place, and they had left all the irrigation pipes, etc. So which was good, because then now we had water to water the crops with. By the time we were walking, we were helping on the garden. So whether that was spreading radish seeds or digging up a hole and plopping in squash, zucchini seed or whatever, we were helping on the garden, right? In about 1958, we moved from Calder to Dovercourt, and then these two farms were sold, and he bought a 10-acre parcel up north of, it'd be north of Northgate on 97th Street. And that's basically where I worked with the family for about 20 years on the market garden. So by the time we were walking to the time I finished university, we were working on the market garden. So all these summers, that's where we were. We're planting in the spring, we're taking care of the weeds and right through summer, and then in the fall we would, harvest all the crops. What I remember was this was a lot of work. So from our backyard garden in Dovercourt at the time, we would have hotbeds and put in the cabbage seeds, cauliflower seeds, etc. And these two crops had to be transplanted from our backyard to this 10 acres up in the Mayo. We call it a Mayo farm because it's on the way to the Mayo. When it's time to transplant, we'd have to haul the water out to the garden as well. So on the back of a pickup truck, we had 4 reused oil drums, 45-gallon drums. These would be filled with water, city water, and then they would be trucked out to our Nemeo farm. Our seedlings, we would have to pull them one by one out of our backyard garden into these baskets. I don't know if you remember the Kiwanis apple baskets. Mm-hmm. So they're about yay round with a handle. So hundreds of these were pulled from the back garden and put in these baskets, maybe 3 or 4, and sprayed with some water, put some burlap on top to keep them moist, and these would be trucked out to the farm as well. And then we'd started the grueling process of planting these things, okay? So you use a little trowel, you dig up a hole, pick one of these cabbages. By this time, they're still kind of viable. Put them in the hole and press down the soil. Okay, so you're going to do hundreds of these in one day. It could be cloudy, it could be cold, it could be sunny, it could be scorching. And I remember these days when it was very, very hot. And so one of us or 2 of us would plant these up and down the row, going 2 sides of you, right? And you'd go down the row and plant, 2 rows at a time. And once they were ahead enough, one person would actually give these plants a drink, each one. Now, how would you get the water to where you planted? You can't drive over where you just planted, right? So basically, you open the tap and you fill 2 5-gallon drums. These are old wax containers, metal. They had a loop handle, a long handle made of wire, and 2 of these would be filled, and one of us would have a pole, a wooden pole, put through these these wire handles, put them on our shoulder, and carry them on our shoulder. If you see in this picture, this is a picture from 1934 in Vancouver, but this is the same technology we used. These are the 5-gallon pails that we would haul out to where we're planting. To give each one a drink, this little ladle, this would have been, in our case, was a cigarette tin, like tobacco tin, and on a stick, and this would be our ladle to dip into the 5-gallon source of water, and then given a dribble to each plant. And we did this technology right up to 1975, till the farm was actually sold, right? By the time we planted all the seedlings out of the basket, probably late in the afternoon now, the last thing we did before we could finish was to pick up this little seedling, wilted seedling, and brush some soil on top of the wet spot, basically, where that water was, and just to keep the moisture in. And when I looked at the income tax returns from, the ones we had some very, very lean years. There was one year we had a net income of not even $600. Those are hard times. We never starved though. We never were lacking for food, or we never went hungry, basically, put it that way. The funny thing is, my father never took alternate employment in the wintertime. So once he finished the farm, September, October, that was it. Parked the truck and he'd rest up. And his entertainment was to come down here to Chinatown once in a while and play MJ, Mahjong, the tile game, in the back of one or two of the stores. I remember it's quite funny. It's funny now. At the odd time he engaged in his playing Mahjong, and he was late for supper. Back then we always ate together. And so it was getting late, and my mother would ask me, phone down to this merchant and tell him to come home. Well, she wouldn't do it because that's not what a woman would be doing, right? So she asked me to do it, and so I'd phone down and use my deepest voice and ask for, Bygone Wong, can I speak to him? The surprise sometimes when he came home, he would have come down to one of the barbecue shops and bring home barbecue duck or roast pork, and all would be forgiven.
Yeah.
I guess if you're in these dire circumstances, have the responsibility to your own family, take care of your family, help them out as much as you can. Times are tough. You still have to be resilient. You got to leave your comfort zone, like my father did. I don't know how he would have felt at 13. Did he feel like the family abandoned him, or he didn't have a choice to come, right? And and later on, I was talking to friends of the family. I discovered way after, when I started the process of, genealogy, the family tree, that sort of thing, that before he even left, he had worked for a neighboring village. He had worked for a family in a neighboring village, which was about eight miles away. And that was before he was 13. So he was a child laborer, way back before he even came to Canada. Before he was a teenager, he was a child laborer. Yeah. So from that, resilience, basically have to, make do with what you have. Just do your best, And my mother, actually, she came without English, and because she worked on the farm, she could get along without learning English. And so I think it was tough on her, but she was able to, make friends even with the non-Chinese through friendly gestures, give some vegetables to neighbors, that sort of thing. And, whether happy or unhappy, she just stuck with it, She told me a couple of times in her lifetime when maybe we were alone and, she's kind of depressed. She said that at one time she considered back in China to join a convent, to become a nun. Because she said that if you were a nun, you would have shelter and you would have food to eat. My father, more than once said, he didn't expect us to carry on with farm work. He basically said, don't be a mule. Go find something better to do, right? So basically, which I did. Whenever I go by these places, like Government House, down in Riverdale, near the Royal Glenora, Beverly, and up in the Mail, I know these places where he worked, and kind of have a kind of peaceful feeling when I go by. I always tell my grandchildren too, and my children, that this is where your grandfather, great-grandfather worked, made a living.